And welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that reeks of vinegar and oil, just not in the food sense. Well, it's Halloween again, and appropriately, I have a genuinely nightmare-inducing episode to inflict upon you in every conceivable way. So, today I've got one of my little pseudo-documentaries lined up for you, and this one is all about my attempts at adding 8mm and Super 8mm film stock to the archive's regular arsenal. But first, I think a little backstory is in order. When I was in middle school, I found my father's old home movies on 8mm from the late 50s and early 60s in a closet. He proceeded to take the reels down to Robert Waxman's, now defunct, to get them transferred to, as was still the norm, VHS. This tape has long since gone missing, which is just as well, because Waxman's did an absolutely atrocious job. However, after that tape was made, my dad gave me the original reels, which remain in my possession. Anyway, this led me to acquire an old Keystone 8mm projector from an antique store, which was nice and cheap, and was also one big cobweb. There's always a catch. After that, I went on as much of an 8mm bender as a middle school kid can go on. Read 2 1-reelers, 1 2-reeler, and a magnum opus 11-reeler. In the years since, I've occasionally taken on another reel or usually thrift store projector, but I've never taken it too seriously. Now, over the years, I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of these so-called video transfer systems kicking around the thrift stores. And prior to this past summer, I just never bothered to pick one up, largely because, I'd heard that they're total junk. And also because I had it in my head for some strange reason that you absolutely have to use one of these, if you will, black boxes in tandem with an early tape-based camcorder, which of course is absolutely not true. And I'm totally hip to the fact that the real professionals, at the very least, will take a scan of each frame of a film and then rebuild it on the computer. But given that the more proper methods of transfer are just a little bit out of my reach in every way, I figured, well, maybe I should see just exactly what I can accomplish with a black box and whatever gear I've got around here already. And no, I am not attempting my dad's home movies. Those are safe from me. This is the projector I used for all the standard 8 stuff. This projector is currently and possibly permanently out of commission, and you'll see how that happens soon enough. Anyway, this is a Keystone K902 standard 8 silent-only projector, which I believe dates to 1962 or 63. This projector is responsible for the lion's share of transfer work that you're going to see in this episode. This is a Sears Super 8 sound projector, which I think is actually a rebranded Bell & Howell, model 9258. This dates to somewhere in the 1967 to 70 time frame. I did a Ben's junk on this a couple of years ago, so go look that up if you want to hear more about this machine. Here's that black box I picked up. It's an Ambico Deluxe Video Transfer System, and it dates to probably the early 90s. It's basically a couple of translucent plastic screens, one to project film on and one to put 35mm slides in, plus a lens hole to stick your camcorder or still camera up to. Inside the box is a shutter to switch between the two screens, which is attached to a mirror. There's also a light you can use in tandem with the 35mm slide and photo settings. That light is completely useless with regards to movie film. This is a Vidicraft VIDIMATE model VDM300S video enhancer, and I think it's from the early to mid 90s. This item was meant to be hooked up to a VCR, or what have you, in the name of, for example, sharpening and or brightening a dull-looking tape. This also functions as an editing tool in that when editing, for example, a video project, you can use a split-screen function to check your work, you can switch between two video feeds, and you can impose a fade in or out on your footage. I only got this fairly recently, and its initial purpose, for me, was to brighten up videotapes that I'm transferring for the archive that have especially dark pictures, as in the ones that fall below the threshold that my camcorder will accept. I took advantage of the S-video and multiple audio ports on here for parts of this episode. I used two camcorders on this project. One is this cheap Samsung MINIDV camcorder that I got from a thrift store a couple of years ago. It has adjustable shutter speed, and it also likes to mangle tapes. The other and primary camcorder is my trusty old Sony Digital 8 Handycam, which I recorded the first season of the archive on, and has since become my primary tool in transferring video footage to the computer, thanks to its ability to pass footage in and out. Some of today's tests were recorded to tape, while others I simply used this as a pass-through. My regular high-def Handycam was not used, largely because it doesn't like to communicate with other cameras or peripherals. This episode is featuring clips from only 4 reels. This first one is the only standard 8 reel that I was able to use before things went horribly wrong with the Keystone. This is a heavily abridged, silent 2D home edition of the Three Stooges' 1953 short, Spooks, which was originally in 3D. Now, I was going to favor my public domain standard 8mm stuff in the final episode, but while trying to get the hang of the process, I opted to experiment on my not rare, not valuable Three Stooges reel. In case you didn't get the hint, this is the only standard 8 reel that I have any footage of to work with. The first of the Super 8 stuff is this Portuguese dubbed highlight reel from the 1973 Godfather knockoff, The Don Is Dead. This is the only color Super 8 reel I own, and this was already briefly excerpted on the Ben's junk I did on the Sears projector. The remaining 2 reels are 2 versions of Black Hawk Films' Preview 8 reels, one silent, one sound. These feature a lot of clips from mostly public domain films, and I'm using these in an effort to not have to make you sit through the same clips too many times. Anyway, let's get down to my little quasi-documentary on my, in all reality, descent into madness. So let me explain exactly what happened in that last clip. The Keystone has a total of 3 belts, 2 chain and 1 rubber. The chain belt on the left slipped, causing it to get caught up in the other chain belt, which quickly got tangled with the rubber belt, causing it to snap. Now, I've encountered a lot of dead belts in my time, so I was prepared to simply replace it. But while digging around the guts of the projector, I found that the according wheels and such were inaccessible. As it turned out, unlike most of my old gear, this projector was largely riveted and machined together, and that the belt was evidently done very early during the factory assembly process. Given the age of the equipment and my utter lack of metalwork skills, for me to completely dismantle the projector would most likely result in not being able to rebuild it. As such, given that the rubber belt at least had a nice clean break, I opted to attempt to rebuild it using high-grade, supposedly permanent rubber cement, plus electrical tape in tandem with plastic glue. Oh yeah, and the machine froze in just a way that I lost a few inches of my Three Stooges reel in the process. While waiting for my belt repair to cure, I opted to attempt some Super 8 transfers. Like clockwork, upon turning the projector on for the first time, the bulb gave its death flash. The camcorder was not running at that moment. So I immediately went online to order a couple of new bulbs for the Super 8, as well as one for the Standard 8. I was just kind of assuming I could save that projector. With 2-day shipping, my light bulb bill came to $60. Anyway, while waiting for the bulbs to arrive, I decided to take the Super 8 apart and check it out as best as possible. I had already replaced the belt when I first got it, so it wound up being an effort in making sure that everything was tight and intact and greased. I also took the opportunity to replace a rotted foam pad for the projector's outer case using some double-sided tape, glue, and some cut-down sponge paint brushes. I also sprayed out the volume knob, which was a bit scratchy, with some deoxit.
Pela alma da minha mãe, cara. Faz 4 semanas que eu não faço nada.
Você tá completamente maluco. Aqui você vai precisar ir disto.
Garanto que
Vai lhe trazer anos de felicidade.
Obrigado, Frank.
Dá só uma olhada nisso.
I'm Kent Easton of Black Hawk Films. For nearly 50 years, we've had fun bringing classic films to collectors. But I'm convinced that the real excitement lies in the future, when you show sound films from your own library to your family and friends. Movies you own and show at home are timeless.
I mentioned earlier that my MINIDV camcorder has a history of mangling tapes. However, this time when I played around with the eject and load mechanisms plus the playback controls, I found that it was actually playing nice. So, fool that I am, I opted to attempt to get some footage onto MINIDV. And early in that recording, without my knowing it, the camera managed to flip the tape itself inside out and attempted to record on the wrong side of the tape. That tape is currently living in a small Ziploc bag, for some reason.
Bem, agora. Bem, agora.
Hard enough for you, Johnny? You set Vince up, Johnny.
No, Tony, I didn't do it. I swear to God, Tony. I didn't do it. Please, Tony. No, no.
Hard enough for you, Johnny? You set Vince up, Johnny.
No, Tony, I didn't do it. I swear to God, Tony. I didn't do it. Please, Tony. No, no.
I'm Kent Easton of Black Hawk Films. For nearly 50 years, we've had fun bringing classic films to collectors. But I'm convinced that the real excitement lies in the future, when you show sound films from your own library to your family and friends. Movies you own and show at home are timeless. You know, even the silent pictures I grew up with come to life with added music and sound. Here's a sample of what I mean.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. No delicacy nowadays. No consideration for others. Refinement's a thing of the past.
I think I can pretty safely say that this has been the single most stressful and time-consuming episode of this series that I've made to date. And that's a record I genuinely hope I never break. Seriously, all I wanted was just a decent, if not particularly great, method of being able to work with film around here. But anyway, just to give a little extra perspective at the end here, I just wanted to share this. In addition to all the casualties and costs incurred in making this episode, I also wound up having to take about 9 hours grand total of attempted transfer footage just to have enough to work with today. And yeah, the vast majority of this stuff was, even by my lowered expectations, simply not up to snuff. So let's just say that I think I've pretty well figured out why I've seen so many of those black boxes in the thrift stores. This is just one seriously tough and unforgiving task. But anyway, that's it for today's archive. And if you're dumb enough to come trick-or-treating to my door this year, you had best be prepared for a nice long lecture and an especially stinky reel of film in your bag. Now that's scary.